Okay, so my watch says 6:01. So I just want to, we'll continue to let people join the conversation, Jane, but if you want to get us started, I want to be mindful of people's time and well, it's still summer and people are still enjoying some of the few precious days left.
Yeah, I just wanted to welcome people to this forum and to acknowledge that two members of the school committee who are on the community outreach and advocacy subcommittee are here, as well as Art Bataki from our Buildings and Grounds. And we are here to listen rather than to answer questions. Dr. Buto, I just want to say that our superintendent got her doctorate on Monday, and I'm enjoying calling her Dr. Buto, is making herself available to you. And the school committee is learning and thinking just as we all are. So thank you for giving some time, and thank you, Beth, for offering this opportunity.
Sure. So I want to leave most of this time for the people who have joined us, to have them have the ability to share their thoughts. That part of the work as we get the guidance and move towards reopening is to solicit public input on what we're doing, and we've always strongly asked for people to be participatory in the work that we do. So we want to give you the opportunity to talk when we get there. But I wanted to just share what we've been doing since we've received the latest guidance. I tried to send it out to the district right away as soon as we got it. And in the meantime, what we've been doing is try to participate in as many trainings, read as much as we could. We participated in this morning, there was a public health forum that was put on by the Berkshire County Superintendent, so we could work with public health officials. We met with our own public health representatives and talked specifically about what we know in our communities. Listened to the medical professionals speak this morning as well. Met as an administrative team. Met with the school physician. And then we're in the process of putting together a recommendation basically in 3 areas for the school committee, because the school committee is responsible for enacting policy decisions. So we're giving them as much information as we've learned so that they can be as informed as possible when they make their recommendations, which they will be having those discussions tomorrow evening at the special school committee meeting. And we've been very purposeful in taking the time to do this work and to gather public opinion and not rushing to judgment in what we're doing, so that we can see what's happening and make the best decision with the information that we have. So that's the place we're coming from. We're thinking about the 3 areas of policy. I think that will be the focus, I'm assuming, with the school committee would be around a mask policy, a policy around vaccinations, and potential testing opportunities for students. So those are the areas that we're trying to give as much information as possible so that we can make informed decisions. So I don't know if anybody wants to, we'll do our best to answer questions. I think Like I said, the point of this is to be a listening exercise for the school committee and help them in what our community is thinking about and concerned about when they're working through their decision-making process tomorrow. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand and we'll try to go through that and do what we can to answer what we know right now. Everybody's that shy.
I'll ask because I can always go first. What are the medical professionals in our community recommending? And what are the numbers looking like in our 5 towns?
It was a very interesting conversation about that. I think the best thing that I can say that I took away from the meetings this morning where was something that the one of the doctors said when he was trying to describe what their thought process was. And I don't think it would be a surprise to a lot of people, but almost everybody or most districts are looking to have a mask policy for inside, for faculty, staff, guests, regardless of vaccination status. The discussion was that vaccinations for those 12 and under at this point don't look like they're going to be available until at least maybe the end of October at this point. But what struck me the most, I would say, when people are trying to make these kinds of difficult decisions is this is how one of the doctors described it. He said, we don't know a lot about this. There isn't a lot of data collected about, what happens when you're eating lunch or, from this last year. What he did say, which I thought was a great way to explain it, is when I was working up in the ICU, when people went on ventilators, a lot of times they had pneumonia. So he said, what we learned was that there were 5 mitigating things that we could do that would help people get over that and be successful. So he said, we don't know which one of those 5 was the most successful or why it was the most successful. But when we used all 5, we found that it was, we were having better success in getting people off of ventilators and dealing with the pneumonia. So the way they described it to us was whatever mitigating ways that we had been dealing with COVID in the school systems to try to keep those in effect as long as possible to the best of our ability, because for the most part, schools had good success doing those things. So I thought that was a nice way of explaining it, and which is why people were leaning towards at least mask wearing indoors for as one of the highest mitigating factors that they thought provided some success. I don't know if that helps, Joanne.
Thanks. I mean,
I didn't get to the numbers part. I'll tell you what they did say about the numbers.
Okay.
I'm sorry about that. What they did say about the numbers, because I asked that specific question, and we are going to meet on a monthly basis with our local public health officials. We were talking about that today so that we could look at the MAVEN system, I believe they're calling it, where they're going to have the data from the surrounding areas that they can, look at by community, by, South County, so that you can have relevant information and we can assess what the protocols or procedures that we're doing looks like. However, right now they were saying it's kind of interesting if you look in the system, and this is because of some of our towns like Great Barrington includes Alford zip codes and Egremont zip codes, that if you look at the data and you try to add it up, it comes over 100%. It comes to like 125%, which isn't very helpful, so they have to deal with that zip code issue. So they're looking to use this Maven system, is my understanding, to try to get a better percentage. They said that for Berkshire County, South County or something, the number was supposed to be 78%, but they didn't think it was honestly that high. So that's all I know right now. Unless
There are
somebody
some
else has different-
questions in the, sorry, Beth, there's
go
some
ahead. No, that's
questions in
okay.
the chat.
Yep.
So, I just lost them. So one person wanted to know if we knew what percentage of staff and or eligible students for vaccination have been vaccinated.
So let me just do them before I forget them, and then
Sure.
you can. So that was another question that we were talking about today. Could we get a sense? So our nurse leader does have access to a system where you can go in and look each individual up and see if they have been vaccinated. But we also are, if people volunteer to share, that they've been vaccinated, that's another way we can know, so that we can get a more, we can get that information out. So we are going to start the process, at least for faculty and staff, to get a better sense. We probably won't have that until next week. And if, and then we'd have to be thinking about the community, how best to go about that. So, they encouraged today that we, for those who would like to share that information with the schools, that's up to them. They can share it with the nurse if they want to say. The reason that they're recommending people share is there is a protocol when you're doing contact tracing. They've released, what the protocol would look like for this year. And it depends whether or not you are vaccinated, if you're a close contact or not, what the protocol would be. So it does help with the contact tracing process. So that was why, knowing that information would be helpful.
The next question was, will we continue with pool testing?
So the recommendation is that we are going to make to the school committee is that we are going to continue with, we're going to send in, you have to send in an application by this Friday if you would like to participate in the testing options. And there are two diagnostic, I think, and I don't remember all the terms, but we are going to continue both the pool testing and the Binax Now testing that we were doing. There's also a test and stay option that they are talking about. And we think that any and all of those options will be appropriate at different points. And I think it'd be better to have more of those options available than less. So we are going to apply to use them, and we can make the decision whether or not to continue with that as we meet with public health and talk through our data and see how it's working for us. So our recommendation will be that we use that testing.
That's all we have for now in the chat.
Okay, anybody else have some questions or thoughts that they'd like to share or that they'd like the school committee to hear?
I would just add, adding to what Beth said about the pool testing, I would just also include that it'll still be opt-in. So families will still have the choice to opt in or out of the testing. I believe, if I'm quoting Sandy correctly, in all three instances, families will have the opportunity to opt in or not for the testing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Tika has her hand up. Tika, you want to unmute and ask your question or make your comment?
Oh, there I go. I'm just wondering if there's anything in the numbers or in your discussion with the doctors that leads you to believe that you should be any less vigilant than we were at the end of last year as far as masking, distancing, testing, all of it. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. The thought was basically to, err on the side of caution. The distancing piece was interesting. The doctors and the medical professionals this morning, again, just thought the realistic nature of distancing was less of an important factor for them than vaccination, masking. Like, they were kind of ranking what they thought the best mitigation factors were in their opinion. And they didn't really feel, they felt like if when you can get outside, great. That it's not always going to be feasible. It wasn't always feasible last year, even though we did our very best. They understand that with you're working with children and adults, and but they didn't feel like that we should veer off of what the recommendation was for distancing. They had no real issue. They just said wherever possible, we try, and washing hands, keeping, the normal hygiene of what's important, and all of those things are still going to be in place. The cleanings that we do are going to be in place. The sanitizing, most likely, I think I saw a question flash by about masking. I feel like based on everything that we've heard, our recommendation will be masking indoors at this point. I think there's a population of children who currently don't have the option to be vaccinated, and I think it's the responsible thing to do.
Absolutely.
So I think that's where we're headed as a recommendation. And again, that will be a school committee decision, but from everything we heard, they were very, very strongly recommending that.
Thank you.
Any other questions that we might know the answers to at this point? Or thoughts, or I will say that we did talk about, as the campus was a closed campus last year, and because of the at this point the discussion was because outside is there are no restrictions when you're outdoors, that they did not believe that that was going to be the case this year. So the campuses will be available, for people to access again. I think that the closed campus restriction will be lifted.
You have a few more questions in the chat.
Oh, sure.
Will protocol still be in place for eating lunches in the classroom and teachers coming to the classroom rather than students leaving to go elsewhere? And will
No.
there still be early dismissals on Wednesday?
So no. There is, we are going to be using the cafeterias, at least at this point. Again, that is, what we will do wherever possible is have assigned seating or assigned tables, or so that we will be able to do any contact tracing if we need to do that. But that was one of probably the most discussed items. Again, if we will be using the cafeterias, but if people want to take their students outside, that's okay. You know, the reality is though that there, you know, we will be dealing with weather issues that might not always be possible. So we'll do our best to space as much as we can, but we won't be specifically eating in classrooms. Part two of that was what, Julie?
Part two of that was for specials. Will the specialists come to the classroom or will the students move to the classroom?
There will be movement. The movement will be inside the building, but they will be masked.
And I believe you already answered that we will not dismiss early on Wednesdays.
No, there is no early dismissal. It's very clear from the state that it is full in-person 5 days a week with no any other options available.
So someone came in late and asked about pool testing. Yes, we're applying to do pool testing.
Yes, yes,
Someone is questioning about mask mandates for students. Yes, we are recommending all students be masked.
yes.
And then the next
Students,
one is,
staff, faculty, staff, and visitors. Anybody who will come into the building would be masked.
in light of the fact that people who are vaccinated are contracting, passing, and getting sick from COVID, why would there be different protocols for contact tracing for vaccinated versus unvaccinated?
I haven't read, in fact, one of the things they talked about, they thought it was a very, I know nobody finds this surprising, but it was kind of a very not so super clear explanation from the state on, you know, what those protocols were. So what was discussed this morning is that the public health nurses who are meeting first thing tomorrow morning are going to kind of put together a flow chart that says if, then, and why. So everybody has the scenarios and knows what we'd be applying and why. So for instance, if you are a close contact, but you've been vaccinated, it's not, in some cases, it's not necessarily advised that you have to do any type of quarantining or testing if you're non-symptomatic. So they're going to list out, if this is the situation, what would what would the steps be, so that we all can have like a graphic in front of us and know exactly what to expect based on what the situation is at hand. So that should be coming to us in the next, week or so.
Not a question, but just some thoughts. As a nurse working in our community, we have higher rates this summer than last summer, despite now having a vaccine. We are dealing with an aggressive variant, but also have drastically reduced the behaviors that significantly proven to be effective at decreasing transmission, i.e. masking, hygiene, pool testing. I hope the school committee recognizes that science has proven that vaccines work and masking works. Any less than this is creating potentially dangerous situation for our students and staff. And then the next comment was agreed. Here in Ashley Falls, we have 3 families we know, all adults fully vaccinated and all their kids tested positive, likely passed on those breakthroughs to adults.
So again, I would say, the reality is that there will be exceptions for medical and religious exemptions on vaccinations, and there will be there will be people who have to wait because they've had it, or so there's going to be people who are at risk. So I think that was what we're saying. And then we know our younger population won't even have the opportunity, if people feel that that's what they want to do, to vaccinate their children. So I think that's why we're leaning towards, we can always relax the standards, right? But we're going in with as many of the same mitigating options as possible when we start, because that seems to make the most sense to protect everybody right now.
There was a question about populations that can't wear masks for various reasons. You know, whether or not it's a child with special needs or medical reasons, and would we still consider having those accommodations?
We have to, but we do need documentation. And then those accommodations will be made.
Does the school committee have the legal authority to require all those eligible for vaccination to get vaccinated?
I don't know. There is a lot of case law right now coming down on both sides of what my discussions with council have said that at this point they're not aware of anybody who has issued a strict mandate condition of employment with, for that. And so, but there are a lot of pending cases right now. So everybody's watching to see what that looks like.
If there is no mask mandate, will there be an option for remote learning until a vaccine is available?
There is, my gut is, and I can't speak for them, but I can't believe there won't be a mask mandate, but so I will just say that. However, there is no remote learning option. And I put together an FAQ kind of information with links to state information. So that is not an option. So after, depending on what the school is, the outcome of the school committee is, we will then be getting information out to families with the protocols, with any questions like that we know the answers to, with the follow-up information.
Jane has her hand up. Jane,
Oh,
would
Jane.
you like to unmute and speak?
So far, what I believe is that the school committee does have the power to make a vaccine mandate using federal law. That's just a fact that I think is out there, and whether that's something that's a wise thing to do or not is up for discussion, but it's my understanding that we do have the power to do that.
Thank you, Jane. If someone has an exception from mask wearing, can you enforce weekly testing to ensure the safety of others?
I personally am not 100% clear on can I because as we've talked about, right, people have been able to opt in. So I would like to get clarification from legal if you can require. I think there's a possibility that you can require testing for those who are who aren't able to be vaccinated or choose to not get vaccinated as a requirement, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm not an attorney. That's one degree I don't have officially, so.
SBRSD did a great job with the protocols that were in place last year. Let's keep the streak going. So that was a nice positive.
Yes.
Going back to the lunch, there's no plan for social distancing in the cafeteria question.
We are going to do our best. I'm just saying the reality is, we're aiming more for a 3-foot type of situation and keeping people in assigned seating where possible with as much distance, or eating outside, or any of those options. I just want to remind that the guidance and is that that is not something that is mandated, but we're going to do our best to do what we did last year, minus the eating in the classrooms. We're going to use those other spaces.
Will there be remote learning options should temporary closing or class quarantines become necessary?
My understanding is no matter what happens, there will be no remote learning option. Now, everything could change. Who knows what is going to happen, with this variant or any other variant that, there is some discussion that there could be other variants that come about. But at this time, they have been very clear that there isn't going to be any type of remote learning option.
Can you give some idea the percentage of students that opted into pool testing last year?
I don't want to quote incorrectly off, but I will get that. I will get that information on testing, because we did pool testing probably from the end of April on, I want to say. So I'm not sure it was. I'm not sure the number was very high, but I'll see what I can get for percentages. I'll follow up on that one for sure.
All right, we are all caught up on the chat room. All right, we have a new one. What is the current vaccination requirements for the other pediatric vaccines for admittance into school? Example, polio. Are students required to have these? How are exceptions made if they are?
Vaccination exceptions are what I just talked about. If there's some medical exception for whether or not you can have a specific vaccination, and or religious exemptions are, my understanding, those are the only exemptions.
Does the mask mandate carry over to the busing situation, and will there be distancing on the busings again as well?
So it is required that students are masked on the buses. We will have assigned seating on the buses as well, but there is no distancing requirement. And that's explicitly stated, and I believe I put that in the FAQ that will go out to families as well.
We really appreciate your information and offer to get additional information. Percentage of faculty and staff vaccinated, percentage of students who last year opted into pool testing. When can we expect answers to these questions?
My understanding is that the nurse leader will be working on that beginning as soon as Friday. So I'm anticipating that next week we'll have that information. So maybe not for this Thursday school committee meeting, but by our regular meeting that's scheduled on the 26th, we should probably have that information. Bonnie's, I think, hand is up.
Yep. A question. I've seen that some of the towns have a breakdown by age on the percentage of the town that has been vaccinated. Are you able to get that from our 5 towns?
So were you on when I talked about the comments from our public health officials this morning?
I kept on going in and out, so
okay. So what they were saying is that they're hoping to migrate, I believe is the word they were using, to this system called Maven, which they feel like might give us better data than what they have right now. Because even though they have those breakdowns, what they're saying is that because of the zip code issue and the way we have a lot of second homeowners, the way they're using their PO box, if you add up our 5 towns and you even use those breakdowns, it's coming out to over 100%. So the information isn't as accurate in the system that they currently have. So that's why we're having these monthly meetings so that we can look at data from this new system, and I might be able to get a more, what they feel would be a more accurate response. Because right now they're saying it looks like, let's say South County is 78% vaccinated. They do not believe that to be the case.
Well, I just was wondering, in terms of us making an informed decision tomorrow and next Thursday, I was really shocked at the low vaccination rate that Lee posted in every age group. And You know, obviously under 12, they can't do it. But after hearing the same thing you did, and then to see the Lee breakdown with 26% in one area, 24%. So I was hoping that we would have better information for us to act. You don't
I mean,
expect,
that was a question I asked today because I was trying to access it to give it to you, and they just didn't feel comfortable with it. So we're going to start the process through the system that we can have. We're going to encourage people to share with us if they'd like to. You know, I can't force them. We can ask if people would like to share if they're vaccinated, so then we can get a feel for what our communities are like. I don't know the answer to that. They didn't feel like they had really solid numbers to work with at this point.
and just as a follow-up really for everyone, whatever we pass in terms of a policy, we always, as circumstances, if they change, can revisit that policy as necessary as a school committee.
Right, and that's why we're also thinking whatever restrictions we start with can be, but the recommendation was to start definitely stronger and more diligently and see. The other piece around that from the public health nurses were, you want to be thinking about at least thinking through, the cold weather, the flu season type of thing. That's where their concerns are too, just from what they're seeing. So that's going to change. And as we know more about this variant, there'll be more information. So we just have to keep working together to figure out what our next move is.
And the last part of my question is, I hope that in our whatever policy we adopt, we make it clear that the parents are supplying the mask, and a mask is not a gaiter and it's not a scarf.
I actually, in the FAQ that I put in there, I think I put, I can't remember if it's from Yale or the pediatrics, it says, when you say a mask, what does an actual mask mean? That, and it's very specific. The public health nurses did address that, officials this morning, and say, it's really important what kind of mask the kids are wearing. It could be really fun and have their favorite figure on it, but if it's not, really covering what it needs to. But, and they also said, kids have been very good about it. Even, our littlest learners have been great. So, but it is important to know, to make sure that you're using, and it won't be gaiters and scarves and, your turtleneck over your head. That doesn't count.
Before we go to Tika's raised hand, can I just share some of the things in the chat?
Sure.
So people were wondering if they wanted to share with the district that they were vaccinated, who would they share it with?
Yes, if you could send that into the school nurse, and we can have the principals put that in their communication. But if you want to send that information into the nurses, they feel like that would be the place to collect that information.
Who ultimately has the say on what happens with SBRSD policies? Department
That's
of
always the
Ed
school
or
committee.
SBRSD? Thank
School
you.
committee. School committee.
Will the school nurse give rapid tests to students with symptoms or send them home?
I believe it will depend on the protocol and whether or not the parents or guardians agree to have those tests administered based on whatever situation. So there will be something that will be home, be sent home for parents to allow us to perform the test if they're interested.
If a student tests positive, will the whole class be sent home for quarantine for a period of time?
Nope. It'll be on a case-by-case basis. And again, it'll be very specific, because what you have to do with your contact tracing will be looking whether or not the student is a close contact, and then what that means, what the definition of close contact means, and then whether or not they've been vaccinated, they're symptomatic, they're not symptomatic. There will be, there are different scenarios.
And then if a student does have to quarantine, will they have access to schoolwork?
To me, it'll be the same way that they did prior to COVID. If, when you were homesick and you had the flu or pneumonia, we got you your work. One of the things that we will say to families is, we're going to continue to support your educational experience, whatever that is. But if you're sick, stay home, get better. We'll work together to get the educational part to get, to make it happen. But don't take the risk. If you don't feel good, stay home, and we'll get you the work that you need.
All right, Tika, why don't you unmute and say what you wanted to say?
That just actually gave me a second question. So there will be no opportunity for Zoom links into the classroom should students have to stay home. Okay.
Right.
I understand that's hard for teachers. My question was about definitions of close contacts. So it's possible for students to be in the same classroom or in the classroom with a faculty member who tests positive, but not be considered a close contact.
Correct.
Even in light of new variants and aerosols and all of that?
That is what is very specifically, it's very specific, and they've laid it all out for us, and that is my understanding.
Has it changed at all since last year?
It has changed. Because of whether or not you're vaccinated, and there are some even there are other types of symptoms that are identified that they're looking at. The list is longer.
I guess I'd be curious if it has changed at all since the variant, because that seems to have been a game changer for things all around.
What they know, yes. So whatever that document looks like, I think we just got something on Friday, and plus what the public nurses are putting together, I will send that, I will make that available to all of you so you can see exactly what the recommendation is based on. It has a definition of what close contact means, but they're long, so we're trying to put them in a document that you can look at and that makes sense. There's pages and pages, something like 17 pages to read through. So we're going to try to put it in a document that is a reference guide for people, and then you can work with our nurses if you have additional questions.
Thank you.
Sure.
What age are masks being recommended for? Last year,
Yeah.
kindergarten and first grade were suggested but not required.
It's pre-K all the way through.
Jane, do you want to unmute and speak?
Yes, I think it would be very helpful for all the participants to know which things are mandated by the state. When Beth says we're not doing this or we're not doing that, so that you know which things we are not allowed to do on the state level versus the policies that we're allowed to put in place through the school committee.
Right. So that's why when I opened, I was clear. I think that the committee can talk about, we'll be looking at policy around masking, policy around vaccination requirements, policies around testing, what kinds of things that they want to participate in or require. Right, if you need an exemption, so that is school committee. Things like the remote option are the state, and so in this FAQ that I started to put together for families, will be, you know, and depending, I'll include the decisions that the school committee makes, but I will also put in, you know, about like the bus, the masks on a bus, that's a requirement of state. You know, so those types of things, it's very clear, and I've put the link to that specific guidance in the document where I could.
Will a survey be sent out to parents that may want to be heard, but were unable to make the Zoom call? I'm afraid decisions will be made before a survey could be sent.
I don't think that there will be a survey. We are looking at doing a family survey for, you know, how both for family, the adults in the family and students in the family, if parents feel that they, it's a short survey just to get a sense of how people are feeling after COVID, you know, what their experience was like last year, any anxieties or stressors, so that we can incorporate the supports that are necessary in. That will be going out probably next week. But as far as this, I think people have been sending things into me, which I'm forwarding to the school committee. I think we're just going to have to start to make some decisions around reopening, seeing we're now getting towards less than 2 weeks. So if anybody wants to send it in, there's still time. There's public comment tomorrow in the school committee meeting as well. So there were people who couldn't make it tonight, but they can make it, you know, they might be able to join tomorrow. So we're trying to give as many opportunities as we can. As usual, we didn't get a big window from the state, but I'm also somewhat okay with that, because I think it's giving us time to learn more information and get more information from people who have had some experiences.
How long is the quarantine if you are close contact or test positive?
I think it depends again. So I don't have it at the tip of my tongue right now, but I will be laminating it and carrying it with me 24 hours a day. So I just printed it out actually this afternoon. So it'll be on that form. It'll be on, I'll send that information so everybody will know the answer off the top of their head.
Beth, I think you did tell us at the meeting that there's no quarantine period for someone in close contact. I think we read that at the meeting we just had.
Vaccinated or not vaccinated though.
Right.
It depends if you're vaccinated, right?
Yes. So also if they're not experiencing symptoms and they were in close contact, they don't need to be tested. But if they are having symptoms, they can be tested at any time. So that kind of clarifies that question, because I know you found those details at the end of our admin meeting yesterday. So I just wanted to clarify that you did address that.
Thank you.
This is another one that I think they would have to go to information you send out later, but it's what is the breakdown that will be informed of positive tests this year? Example, if a 5th grade student at Undermountain tests positive, will it be announced that a student in Undermountain 5th grade has tested positive? Oh, no. I don't think so, right?
Right.
Yeah, we need to be sensitive to confidentiality. Everyone who is in close proximity or needs to be concerned will be contacted. And we have, you know, seating charts and everything in place to ensure we are following protocols and really upholding student safety.
We will be continuing pool testing. We are recording the presentation and it will be accessible to all afterwards. So if somebody didn't get to listen in now, they can listen in later.
Yep.
Second, Rich's question, that would be very helpful. I'm not sure about that question. Why other schools do this? Last year, when there was a case in Undermountain 1st grade, it was announced. I don't recall that.
I can clarify that. The protocols are always changing. So it was announced. We were being super cautious. The vaccine was not available to even students, 12 and older. So we were really doing everything, and the state requirements were much more rigid than, rightfully so. Now that people are vaccinated, I mean, we have like the highest vaccination rate in the nation or close to it. We now can follow the new protocols and still keep everyone safe. But our priority is to have students there 5 days a week, learning as much as possible.
But I think what they're referring to is whether or not we were going to, there was a balance between being able to identify and, specifically, identify, or even, in some cases, I hate to say it, there was ostracizing of families potentially, because of whatever might have happened. So there is a balance between trying to respect people's privacy and keep people safe. So what we did is do our best to provide information that was need to know, and there is an element of fear and worry that I think is legitimate. Obviously, it's a scary thing, but what we tried to do is not let that escalate in a way where people were deciding they were a close contact when they weren't a close contact, or creating a sense of panic where there wasn't a need to be a sense of panic. So we tried to stay consistent and share what needed to be shared. Those who needed to know the information were contacted, and if you weren't contacted, you weren't at risk. And we took that very, very seriously. So that was how we went about it. And it wasn't easy, but it was, it was what we felt was best for our entire community.
And Beth, correct me if I'm wrong, but just to piggyback off what you're saying, if we create a sense of hysteria, our school culture and community is anxiety ridden, students are anxious, we want them to feel safe and be able to learn to the best of their ability. So in order to ensure we do that, we have a heavy focus on social emotional learning this year. I'm sure
Right.
You've heard that. And we have standards are coming out for grades 1 to 3 in social emotional skills. This pandemic has really caused us to look at student needs emotionally, and this has caused a really detrimental toll on them. We need them in school. They need to be with us.
Well, we're finding that connection was really important to people. And I think that's why these surveys are going to be very helpful, so that we can have those supports in place and support families in whatever way would be most necessary. I think we did a great job of banding together as a school community last year. And I hope that we all continue to do that moving forward this year. We took care of each other. We stayed home when we didn't feel well. We did everything from, making food or whatever it is, taking care of people. And that's how we are in these communities. And it's something we're very proud of. And I don't see that changing no matter what the circumstances get like. Oh, is Bonnie's hand back up? Is it up?
Yes, it's back up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, a couple of things, Bev. I know you'll be sending out information. What I'm hoping is a couple of things in it that you can give a link in whatever you send out, so that people who miss this will know from your communication, this is how you can access the session if you missed it. So that's number one. Number two, I don't know if this is feasible, but I'm thinking rather than you dealing with almost 700 families, it might be good if each of our principals and Sandy and the nurse, that there is a way that families know You don't have to have everything go through the superintendent. If Charles and Jesse identified someone, or if they wanted to be the person themselves, so that families with questions, because there'll be a zillion of them, don't feel it's only through you. So it's just a suggestion, you know, among your administrative team, if we have additional contact people for the families to have.
Well, we do believe very strongly that this is the role of the nurses and those people who are appropriately trained to do that. So I'm sure the principals and Mrs. Hubbard oversees the nursing staff, and we have a nurse leader, and there is a protocol in place for how we report. That is still a thing, you know, what we report. We don't have to do the same level of reporting that we did last year, but we still have to, we do still have to call in if there is a, you know, an outbreak or something like that. So they will be trained in those, and the contact for people will filter through the nurse who will be working with public health.
I'm just thinking in terms of families who really may be concerned. Families who are really concerned about academic issues, if they know they don't have to wait to get an answer from you, if it's, you know, like the way you lay out your chart, if these are your questions, go to the nurse. Here's contact. These are your questions. Go to this contact. Mr. Miller. That's what I'm getting muted. That's what I'm hoping, and whatever you put together, it might help in terms of additional communication, and also more rapid, because you can't do it all. So that's my comment.
I got muted on my own party. So yeah, no, so I just wanted to say that, yeah, I don't intend to do it all. I have an amazing administrative team. I am not at all interested in doing it all. I'm happy to let them share in the joy of responding and being there. They run their buildings, and they will have those the appropriate communication. So it does say in the FAQ, where possible, contact the nurse, contact the principal, contact. So that should be how it is always.
Mm-hmm.
We're also including a public health notice from the nurses' offices, respective of the buildings, from Jesse and I next week in our principal's welcome back letters.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments in the chat, Julie?
There has been a little bit of chatter. I'm trying to make sure that I get it in the right order. I'm sorry I muted you by accident, but it was the only way to mute the background noise.
It's okay. It's okay.
And I figured you would figure out how to unmute.
I did eventually.
So there's still some concern in the chat about how much information is given to families when there is a positive case, and the difficulty between protecting people's privacy, but making sure that families are aware if there's a chance that someone was exposed in their family, particularly when they have elderly family members and whatnot.
I totally understand, and I'm just going to reiterate what I've said from day one, is that we have followed the guidance on that to a T. You do not, we have given exactly the amount of information that we need to give to the people who need to receive it. It is important, and that's why we're doing what we're doing around seating charts and being able to identify as closely as possible who would be a close contact. And we take that part very seriously, but I think I just want people to know that those who needed to know, and I mean, literally, I had people from separate campuses identifying themselves as a close contact to someone on a campus. You know, that's not a thing. So I just, you know, those who need to know were informed, and they handled it in the manner that needed to be handled. And if you were not informed, you were not at risk. And that was what we followed. So we will do the same thing based on whatever the protocols give us this year. Tika, did you have another question?
I do. I was just wondering how you would go about figuring contacts if you're not going to have the same distancing, i.e. using cafeteria or being a little more lax, or acknowledging that smaller children are unlikely to keep 3 feet apart at all times. Don't those factors make it a little more difficult?
No, because I think with the smaller kids, just because they're using the cafeteria, they're still going to have an assigned seat. You know what I'm saying? And they're still going to be trying to stay as far, you know, they're still going to try to have a 3 foot or a, you know, I don't think 6 foot's going to be realistic in a cafeteria. So I'm not going to pretend that it is, but if they're sitting outside, they can have more distance anyway. And if you're identified outside, you know, there's no close contacts outside, according to the protocol. So, you know, where possible, I mean, they're still going to have desks in their room with assigned seats. You know, those things are going to happen, but I think it'll be, we'll be able to identify close contacts. Jane, did Jane have, or did Tika have another?
I just wanted to raise my hand to call attention to the fact that we've reached the hour, the end of the hour that was designated for this. And that doesn't mean that anything that you don't think is resolved, it's a dead issue. It just means that this was the amount of time that we felt we had available to share with you. And the conversation is not over, it's just over for tonight.
And, you know, feel free to send in any questions or concerns. You can send them to me for right now, and I will filter them through and add anything if I see a pattern of questions that didn't get answered. I will try to add that and the information that people would like to the FAQ that will be going out, and there'll be more than one. This will just be the first one with as much information, and we'll keep adding to it as we get closer to the start of the year. But I want to at least get information in people's hands that we know, so we can start off the year, and the principals will be doing the same with their expectations and their building protocols for their classrooms, because they will be slightly different based on age. Anybody else? Was there anything else in the chat, Julie, that I didn't get to?
No, I think you did a great job, covered everything.
All right. Well, if anybody thinks of anything else, you're all very good at finding me, so I'll be happy to get back to you, or have someone get back to you at any point, and we'll continue to keep at this and inform you. I really appreciate everybody coming out and taking the time to be here tonight. And I hope for the school committee too, this was helpful as you're thinking about some of the policies for the opening of the year. Are we good?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night, and we'll see everybody tomorrow.